Welcome to episode 53,
Air. Join us as we talk about why we resist air, the joys that we find in practice with air, how it adds depth and movement to our magic and our mundane lives.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
Ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
Races,
and backgrounds.
with a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true. Our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Welcome to episode 53, Air.
Air.
Woohoo! Yes, and this is the last of our series of elements. Part of the reason that it's last will be a part of our discussion, I'm sure. But let's start with a little bit of a check-in, see what's going on in our lives outside of the podcast. And would
great.
you like to get started? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. So I wanted to check in about something that happened and how I reacted to it. So I'd like to start the story a couple of years ago during, as we call it down here, Snowvid. So that was when we were on COVID lockdown. And then in South Texas, South and Central Texas, we had like a really big freeze and we like lost power. Some people lost power, electricity, water. So when that happened, I have 4 large trees in my yard, 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and a bunch of plants. And I covered up all the plants and stuff like that in hopes that they would survive. So some things died, some things didn't, some things kind of were affected, like I had limbs die and stuff. But I really love my trees. Like I bought my house for the trees and the house was good, but like I wanted the trees. So like that's why I bought this house. So I think for like 2 years after that, and I've been watching my trees and like I lost a lot of limbs on my trees, and I've just been letting nature do its thing and hoping that things would be okay. And about a week and a half ago, there wasn't a storm or anything, but about a week and a half ago, I came home and my tree in the backyard, it goes up and then it V's. So I have two major like trunks that shoot out of the main trunk and then go up into the canopy of the tree. And one of those offshoots had cracked and broken and fell down. And I felt so sad to see that happen. So like part of that had died and like there wasn't any green on it, but I was just kind of letting it be. But part of it did have green on it, but the whole thing just cracked and fell down. So I was sad. Now here's what I really want to share about that. After a couple of days, I was sitting in my living room, kind of looking at the tree that had cracked and like the whole limb had broken. What I realized is that is the section of tree that is actually right above the part of my yard where we buried the things that we used in my divorce ritual.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. Ooh.
Whoa. So I don't really know what it means. I don't even know that it means anything in that way, but I do find it really interesting to notice that like that is the section that like majorly that like cracked and fell down, I'm just sitting here, just holding space, wondering if that means anything, if it will unfold in a way that is meaningful. It might just be where the tree cracked, but I just think it's really interesting.
I think it's really a powerful event, and whether I suspect the meaning that it has is whatever comes out of your processing. But I'm not of the school that that was a coincidence, or if it was a powerfully meaningful coincidence. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So that's how long do you remember? How well, of course you do. How long ago did we do that ritual that you buried the stuff there?
We did that ritual in like I think the fall of 2015.
So 7 years later. I'm
Oh,
just saying, 7 years later.
hmm.
Whoa, that's the end of a cycle. You know that, right?
No,
Damn.
what
Well,
does
just
that mean?
cycles. We just cycles are 7 years. Oh, it wasn't you that I did that tarot work with, but just 7 years are tend to be a cycle. If you look at a lot of things, they go by sevens, and sevens are powerful, particularly in terms of magic. Seven's a magically powerful number. But there's often, like in tarot cards, there's a thing where after 7 years, if you do numerology to find your life card and all that kind of stuff, that certain things start to cycle back. And
Oh,
we'll have to sit down maybe during the holidays at the end of the year, and when you have a little bit more free time. There's some wonderful things that we can talk about in terms of that, but cycles and things like that, and ways to look back at your life, and then be able to look forward, and understand a little bit what might be coming. And but wow, 7 years, wow, that's all I'm going to say, but I'm going to say a lot. Wow.
thank you. Thanks for listening. I've been really excited to share that with you.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. That's yeah, and it's a tree, which is so having the past been so important for you, and it was one of the reasons that you're in that place
Hmm.
on so many different levels. Oh, that's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
And I'm sorry for your loss,
Yeah.
and kind of, I don't know if I'm excited or just like really, really deeply interested in what's going to come out of this in terms of your processing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would you like
Mm.
to share a check-in?
Darn tootin', baby. So I'm in New York City. I came in for my baby cousin's 60th birthday bash, which was 3 days. My friends were joking it was like an Indian wedding, and he's an unmarried. He's gay. I guess I can say this, and so he said after a while it started to feel like his wedding. It was super, super, super fabulous. There was a cocktail party on Friday night. There was a dinner. There was a huge dinner at. Have you heard of 54 Below? So the
Mm-mm.
former Studio 54, the famous. So yeah.
Ah,
So this is a dinner supper club that's in the basement there. And then brunch on Sunday, and it was just filled with. There were like 100 people there, and filled with people who love and respect and cherish him, and the energy in that room all 3 days, and all of the events, I'll say, was just incredible. I mean, it was just, you could feel the love. Even the wait staff, they were kind of wandering around with these kind of dazed expressions on their faces, and some of them would kind of dance through the dance floor with food, and it was just incredible. And instead of gifts, he asked if people would like to sing a song on, because there was a piano bar on Saturday night, and so I sang "Hello Dolly," but instead of the word Dolly, I put in his name, and I
oh,
changed the word so it's like welcome, because I think I'd mentioned he had worked in the Obama administration for a while, and so that took him away, and so I changed all the words to fit his circumstances, and then sang "Hello Dolly," and with his name. And then his goddaughter, who is also my goddaughter, and I and my bestie from college sang "What I Did for Love" from a chorus line. And he was just crying. I mean, it was just wonderful. So it's just been a great weekend of fun, and all of the fam on that side was in, and so that was great. I'm just going around, walking around New York City. I met a friend yesterday, and we went down to the Whitney Museum, and we ate at Grand Central Terminal Oyster Bar, and just all of these wonderful New Yorky things. And it just reminds me so much of when I was younger, and I used to come to the city a lot. Um, and so it's been like this morning I met him for breakfast. So I walked over, you past the Rockefeller Center where they're putting up the tree, and seeing the ice skaters, And I think after we're done recording, I have some work I want to do, and then I think I'll walk up to Central Park. So
Mm.
it's just been a wonderful. The weather's super, super cold, but it's good because I walk fast and then I start sweating, so it keeps me kind of balanced. It's just been a super, super visit. All good, no rain. As long as there's no rain, I'm good. I'm good to go. And just I think it's just all of the things that were going on just kind of contributed this to being a really magical period. So it's been good.
And the view from your room, from your condo?
Yes. Yes. So yeah, I'm in an apartment here. I have a timeshare, and anytime I make a reservation now, I just ask for a view. And sometimes it's like last couple of weeks ago, I was in New Orleans, and I my room was cantilevered over the Mississippi, and looking right out the window, it's great. You look a little to the left, you see all the cranes and the all that kind of stuff. To the right, there's this pipe spewing something, so maybe not too much, but I've just learned now to ask for a view. So the view from my window here is the Chrysler Building, which is lovely.
Jeez, beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been great. And then today's Tuesday. Tomorrow I'm going into New Jersey and doing Thanksgiving with the fam, and then I'll be back in San Antonio at the end of the week. Yeah. So it's been good. It's been really good, and I'm so loving this, and it's kind of recharging my batteries for like the excitement of city life. One thing I just want to mention is as I'm walking back from his place, I'm passing the boutiques and Saks Fifth Avenue and all this kind of stuff and all the windows, and I have stepped out of this consumer culture where you need the newest bag and the newest this and the beautiful this and the Coach and the Fendi and the Louis Vuitton and all that kind of stuff. But it was funny. I was walking past this beautiful jeweler, and I saw these gorgeous watches, and I was thinking, oh, I should just kind of look and see how much they go. I need a watch like I need a seventh tit. I don't even wear the watches I have. I wear a Fitbit. But you see how insidious it is? It's like,
Hmm.
I don't need a watch. I never wanted a watch until I saw how the beautiful display. It's almost like it's consumer crack. It
Hmm.
really is. It's just
Ooh.
it's just
Hmm.
it's almost like you can't resist it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just it was so fun. How much jewelry have you seen me wear? Very little, right? I wear these
Very
same
little.
earrings, yeah, all the time. Every once in a
Mhm.
while, I'll change out my earrings, and it's like it's a big occasion, And I was going into a jeweler to buy a watch that I don't need. Never, anyway. So I found that really really interesting, and it kind of threw into relief some of the things when I was talking to friends here. The things that we were talking about, and it just seemed they are just bombarded day in and day out with the bright, shiny this, that, and the other, and how you will be so much more cool if you have these things. Or I guess I'm not sure what all of the messaging is, but I know it was working on me for a hot minute.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So now that we've all checked in, let's talk a little bit about hair. And I see our subtitle is "Why We Love It, Why We Don't." I don't. Did I write
I
that? Or
love
did
that
you?
idea.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure. I'm not sure who I could have been. Either of us wrote that. I think
yeah,
we're
yeah.
both jamming on it. But maybe as a way to start, we could talk about and our resistance to recording this episode. And those who have listened to possibly like our other episodes would notice that we've been saying we've been going to do this for a long time, and then we don't. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a good place to start.
I think that's a wonderful place to start. So just to recap, we've done all the other elements. We did fire last year, last fall, last summer. Then we did water early this year, and then earth back in April. And for a number of reasons, we just kept saying, well, I don't even know if we decided we were going to do air last, but we just did the others. And then we said, I think a couple of months ago that we were going to do air, and we didn't. And
Hmm.
then other things came up, and oh well, let's do this, and we pushed air back, and then but why is that? I mean, well, look, well, I have a number of reasons, and I suspect you do as well. What is where are we coming from as we're thinking about air? What are your thoughts?
So, so I actually think that I have uh, at the risk of sounding cliche, a pretty love-hate intensity with air in my life. Um, I think a lot of it was really more subconscious until we started diving into why we were both of us were resisting in different ways recording this episode. So I'm actually very proud of the air that I have in my life, as far as the correspondence goes with like thought and reason and like oratory and like a lot of those correspondence with air. I really like that I bring that. Like I am a very verbal person. I I do well in school, not because I think I'm really smart in any way, but I think that I'm good at learning. And so like I think that there's a lot of things in my life that air has brought me and shown up that's really, really beautiful and powerful for me. I am a Pisces, but I am a cusp of Aquarius. Like I'm like literally right on the dividing line between those two. So I know that I have a good amount of air in my chart. My resistance to air, though, that I think was part of the reason why I kept kicking the can down the road, is that I'm an ENFJ. I'm an Enneagram 2. Like I'm very heart centered, but my protection is air. I go to air whenever I'm in crisis or whenever I am in protection in some way. Like it's my go-to. It's my shield. It's my armor. It's what makes me feel in control. So, like I read this, I don't remember which, because I've read so many of Brene Brown's books. So there's a story in one of Brene Brown's books about whenever her mom was hospitalized for an emergency, that she just like starts being like, okay, this sibling is going to go do this, and this sibling is going to go pick up this, and this sibling is going to go get our medications. And, like she starts doing that. And then she realized, like her siblings point out like, hey, you're like avoiding. And when I read that story, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. So I think that while I love the way that air shows up in my life, I think that I also have some, I'm not exactly sure what words to use, but I have some like pushback, in that I don't always like whenever I go that way, because it means that I am somehow protecting. And then I wanted to just share like a short personal story about this experience. So this is just the story actually turns out really well for everyone involved. And like just a little bit of a trigger warning here, that there is like some talk about like a car accident and some like severe stuff. So in case people want to like fast forward like 20 seconds, but like when I was in my 20s, there was a good friend of mine, was in a car about 5 minutes in front of me and a group of friends, and he was in a head-on car crash in rural Missouri. And so we're like in like rural Missouri, like where the roads are like labeled by letters, like you're driving on A or CC or something like that. So we're in rural Missouri, and my friend is in a head-on car accident. And then the car that I was in, we showed up maybe like less than 5 minutes later whenever we reached it, because he had driven ahead of us and left a few minutes ahead of us. And like when we came onto that car accident, just like that Brene Brown story that I shared, like I just snapped into protection, and I started, like talking to people about like, okay, so you're over there with this person who's like injured, and you're over here with this person. And like, we found our friend who is in like a really horrible, like very, very, very bad state. He almost passed away, but he didn't. He ended up surviving, but he was resuscitated whenever the helicopter got there. But like I was very much like in my coping of like in a very air way of like organizing and like delegating and like, but it was just my sense of protection. But I turned off in that moment. I can remember telling myself like, you're having feelings right now, and those feelings are not going to help anything. So you need to turn those feelings off, and you need to turn the thinking on, because that's what's going to help right now. And in that moment, I flipped off my feelings. And it wasn't until years later in therapy that I realized that I had flipped them off. But like, it's not just like a switch that you can just on and off. Like I had never been able to turn them back on again. So I, in therapy, I was able to like work through some of that post-traumatic stress from that incident, as well as from childhood, so that I could turn those things back on. So I think I have a lot of resistance to leaning into this part of myself, because it's where I go in crisis, or it can be where I go in crisis. And so I have a lot of like pushback against it. But at the same time, it's done these wonderful things for me in my life. So as we were doing the outline for this episode, I was really realizing like how much of a full person it makes me, and how much of who I am it is. So that's where I'm coming from. What about you?
Well, before we talk about me, I have a question.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
and you know, feel free to not answer. Could part of the resistance be maybe an association with this type of approach, associating it with trauma, or associating it with, having to do stuff? So, I mean, could that be a part of it, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think like it took me a while to dig myself out of it. And then um I guess I don't always like who I am whenever I snap into this part of me. Now I do like who I am when I like choose to like invoke these traits. It makes me a great ritual planner. It makes me a great organizer. It's done a lot of really great things for me. But um, as of right now, I'm having a hard time parsing those out from each other.
I love the way you put that, where you said when you choose to do it, as opposed to kind of a knee jerk, like
Hmm.
just falling into it because it's what you know, or it's where you can survive, or have control.
Hmm.
I love that idea of choosing to do that. That to me sounds like it's a major kind of threshold in terms of how the the interaction with that type of thinking is. To come to me, I think a lot of it. So for many years, I just, like, kind of like you, I lived there. I lived and it's funny because I prided myself on living in that area. I believe it or not, I think okay, you're gonna howl, or maybe you won't howl. I don't want to project, and I don't know how you're gonna react to this, but I think I started privileging that type of approach to life from my early teens, probably from my childhood, but I knew I was thinking about it from my early teens, when I realized I had this super huge crush on Spock in the original Star Trek.
Oh my gosh. Who has a crush
I
on
had,
Spock?
I had fantasies of being married to Spock and having little Spock children.
Who does that?
Me, apparently.
You do Slash. Is there Slash about Spock?
Oh, I did. Yeah, yeah. Well, so a lot of women slash. I don't know why. I guess to keep us from being Mary Sue's or something. Slash people that we would go to bed with in a
Mm-hmm.
heartbeat. But we slash them because another man might be our competition, but they're not really my competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm thinking that's why. But anyway, but let's get back to me.
Oh my gosh. That is,
So, yeah, isn't that is
oh.
and what makes it sick, or maybe let's say unhealthy, which is sick, is that I prided myself on it, and I judged people who couldn't do that. So have you heard the term Sense and Sensibility?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a it comes from Jane Austen, and the idea being sensed are the people who are being pragmatic and logical, and this is the way the world is, and practical, and this is how we're going to negotiate it, as opposed to people who are driven by their feelings. and their sensibility. So that means, like, I know I should do this, but I'm so emotional I can't do it. Or I know I shouldn't do that, but I love him so much I am going to reject everything that, that kind of stuff. And so I judged people who were sensibility people. I mean, there's a pathology here that I'm not willing to delve into during our episode, but who I surrounded myself with. I surrounded myself with sensibility people, and then constantly judged them in my head. I hopefully didn't judge them too much in our interactions, but I know in my head I was judging. Wow, that was so. Anyway, and I think, as I started to grow and crack out of that, I mean, it took decades to crack out of that shell. But as I started to do that, I kind of flip-flopped in the opposite direction, not becoming more sensibility, but judging that and rejecting that part of me in a way, but not going to sensibility. So I had nothing. I mean, quite frankly, but now trying more to not necessarily to not choose a specific way of dealing with things, but trying to be more intentional and trying to recognize what's needed in the situation, not only for the situation itself, but prioritizing what's needed for me. Because I spent so many years prioritizing what I thought was necessary for others. And so now trying to let other ways of handling or dealing with something have a chance to get in there. Does that make sense?
Wow.
Are you still stuck on Spock?
I am still stuck on Spock. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. Feel free. I mean, the later Spocks are a little more hunky, but yeah. I mean, this just goes to show how, as a kid, you make a decision about something, and it can color your life for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. And I know we're both twos. Do you know your Myers-Briggs?
Yes, I do. I'm going to have to look it up because I for some reason, I just don't want to remember it. But I remember when we did it in our group, there was only one other woman who was in the same thing as me. So I am ESTJ.
So you're an E.
Supposedly.
And then
I really should retake that because sometimes I'm delusional and I how you sometimes put what you think you should be. I don't know, but I at the time, when was this? Remember when we all did this?
It was a while ago.
At least 10 years ago. So it might be different, but I'm an ESTJ.
Okay.
J meaning judge.
Yeah, I'm a ENFJ, and I'm very JE.
So yeah, so you can you see my? Well, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Mm-hmm. To the determined realist. Yes. Wow. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, does that explain some things there?
I think it's interesting partnering like what I know about Myers-Briggs with what I know about Enneagram, which we're both twos.
Yeah.
And then what I know just anecdotally about being with both of us, I can definitely see this this mixture of like thought and feelings swirling around together, crashing into each other, rolling in together.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes. And just before we go on, I think that the reaction that I'm really still doing a lot of work on is that crashing that you mentioned. Sometimes I feel as if I don't handle things well because I'm trying to not be, so in my head and so, the practical, determined realist, and I'm going to control. I'm trying not to be so controlling, and I'm trying to be more open to what can come to me if I'm just open. And I think I make some missteps, and then I judge myself because of them. So it's not even a tightrope walk. It's not even that because I feel like I'm not on the tightrope most of the time. I think I'm like on my crotch all the time. tightrope, trying to not, then flinging a leg so that I don't fall over. So it's a process, and at my age, I'm still working through it. Well, so there we go. Yeah, and I need to
So
apologize. You may hear some noises, some car noises from, I'm up on the 20th floor, but it is New York
you're
City, so.
you're in New York City, so
Hmm.
so that's what we're bringing as we enter this
Yes.
episode. Just going back to our tagline, raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Bring that to the party.
I'd love to talk about air as we move deeper into this episode about all things mundane and magical about air.
Yeah.
So like I think we're going to come at it from multiple angles.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. So one of the things that I think it's kind of a go-to, and it's kind of permeated the just the dominant culture out there. This idea of air, one aspect of air as being calming, and so there, the people will often say, "Okay, calm down, take a deep breath." Or let's all take a deep breath or something like that to kind of stop where the energy seems to be going and maybe either derail it or channel it in a way that might be a little bit more effective. I only learned about 3 or 4 years ago. Talk about being sensitive to divergent ways of living and of being in a body. That there are people who have problems with taking a deep breath, either emotional because, for example, there's a type. So when people are asthmatics. I think a lot of the kind of the thinking about it for people who are not is that it's hard to take breaths in. It's like they're struggling to breathe. But I could be wrong about the percentage, but I think a greater percentage is that there is a percentage of people who can't. The asthma manifests in that they can't let the breath out that they're breathing in, but they can't get breath out, so they're filling and filling and filling and filling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a kind of a neurological or emotional condition where taking a breath like that is actually triggering.
Hmm.
And so when you say something like that, there's going to be a small population of people for whom that is either incredibly difficult or it's actually going to trigger the opposite, more anxiety, more tension, more panic on their part because everyone else is calming down and they can't do it. I never knew that.
No, I had never known that either. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. For the most part, generally, that's a really useful technique. When like we'll do this in our group when things are starting to get the anxiety or things are starting to get heightened. We'll say I feel like we need to all take a deep breath for a moment,
Mm-hmm.
and it tends to be a way to calm, but also a way to center and maybe get back into the group energy. And it's good to see that sometimes out in the mundane world.
Mm-hmm. I think our culture is way more accepting of like the logical stuff. And I think especially as a woman, our culture judges feelings and emotions more so. So I think that there's like a putting up on a pedestal of things that are associated with air and a lessening or like a shunning of the like the more feelings oriented stuff.
Oh, totally, totally. Well, we've talked about this in the past. The brain, the mind, the male, the body, the feelings, the female, and
Mm-hmm.
as that's a major platform of the patriarchy, right? Is that the brain and the mind can keep all of this world going, whereas emotions would cause everything to fall apart. And because of that, so there's so many small, minute, little micro aggressions that are perpetrated on on feelingful people. And like I said, I was a part of that, the feelingful people and people who can get out of the brain and just sense and things like that. Yeah, yeah, they're definitely judged and judged wanting in many cases, right?
Hmm.
But what are some of the so before we go down into the patriarchy, did we go there last time and the
We
time
did.
before that?
We did.
So let's give them a rest, whatever. What are some of the positive ways in which we see, the air associations out in the mundane world that you can think of?
I love, I've mentioned this in previous episodes. I love feeling wind on my body. And I love the movement and the energy that brings. So I love whenever I'm taking a walk and I feel the wind blowing against my skin. I love when I'm dancing, and I normally wear my hair down when I dance. And when I'm dancing and I feel the air moving through my hair as I turn around in a turn, like I love that feeling. And I don't think there is anything that makes me feel more powerful clothing wise than when I'm wearing my cape and I'm walking and my cape is like billowing behind me. So as I speak all of this, I think one of the things I'm realizing is like air to me is like tied to movement.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, you're right. Yeah, change and
Hmm.
excuse me, and things happening. Yeah, it's very airy. It's for me. I love the you mentioning the feeling of air in your body. I think I've said a number of times, my go-to is sitting and watching water, but I forget that a part of that experience tends to have a great deal of air. So, the two areas that I think of most are at the beach, and it's usually kind of windy at the beach, and so I'm sitting there on the earth, on the sand, watching water, but the
Hmm.
wind is kind of blowing, and then the other blowing against my body, and I'm facing into it in many cases if I can. Well, you actually want to face against it because it's usually blowing sand, but I love that feeling. And then the other is like I'm on a cruise ship and I like to sit in the prow and just, as we're diving in, cutting the water, piercing the water, but the wind. It's like if you've seen the movie Titanic, I am the king of the world. It's that feeling where that wind, I am like the prow of the boat, and I am cutting the wind myself, you know, and
Hmm.
cutting through the wind and feeling its power and feeling my power in that it's not pushing me back. I'm still going forward. I mean, the
Hmm.
boat is going forward and I'm on the boat, but still I'm a part of that. So
Hmm.
it's kind of the really elemental experience of delving into that element and being me and feeling it and kind of mingling the two, and I think that's a big part of it for me.
I love that.
Hmm. And would you tell us a little bit about the shirt that you're wearing?
Yes. So I'm wearing it's actually from Cirque du Soleil show Alegria, which my
Hmm.
partner and I
Oh,
saw at their first stop on their tour after COVID when they first reopened. So we drove to Houston, but there I have hummingbirds. Like hummingbird imagery is all over that show. So
hmm
hummingbirds are very important to me.
hmm
So I got this, but I think that I think one of the things that really reminds me of air is seeing things like the birds flying in the sky. Particularly, hummingbirds are particularly important to me, but birds flying in the sky, um, and the other things that are in this that fly, like bees and bats. I love bats.
Have you ever been up to the bat cave? The bat cave, but you know what I mean, up on
I
36.
Are you talking about Austin?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's millions of bats that live in this
Hmm.
bridge in for those that aren't from this
Oh,
area. There's like these millions of bats that like live in this bridge, and in the summer months, like you can sit outside on watch these bats come out. fly out. And for
Mhm.
me, as I watch it, it looks like a liquid,
Yes.
the
Yes.
way that they flow out. Just millions
They,
and millions of bats just
they
flowing and
twirl and they,
swirling.
yes.
Like it looks like a mixture of like liquid or smoke, the way they pour
Mm-hmm.
out and swirl like in a cauldron, like
Mm-hmm.
swirling cauldron up in the sky. It is magical to watch. But lots of people do that. There's even like a bat statue on the
Yeah.
bridge, so it's like a whole thing. But
Yeah.
if anyone's ever in the area at that time of year, it's very, I mean, it's not marketed as being witchy, but like I was there and I was like crying. I'm like, oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. There's actually one closer to us. It's Route 300 3006 is what I call it,
Mhm.
3006. And it's back I think it's actually called Bat Cavern Road or Bat Cavern, and there's a cavern back in there too. So that's a little closer if you don't want to go all the way to Austin.
And
But you don't get the cocktails or anything like you do.
I think that one is actually larger than the one in Austin, but the one in Austin is like more popular because
Yeah.
it's
It's
in
more
Austin.
accessible. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more accessible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that idea, watching the birds fly, watching them actually catch uh, I forget what they call them, but the drafts where they're not actually flapping their wings, they're just riding the currents.
Hmm.
And that I could sit and watch that forever. And another thing, and this is, I guess, air too. I haven't done it lately, but about a week ago, I was driving and we had gotten some rain, and then it was the day after, and there were some clouds. It's one thing that I used to love to do when I was a kid, and I haven't done it all in decades, is just lay back and watch clouds and see what the clouds look like. Did
Hmm.
you ever do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's something that I don't know, maybe because we live here and we don't have, I don't know, or I just haven't given myself time to do that. But I used to love doing that. I need to do that. Just lay back. I think what it is you have to give yourself time to lay
Mm-hmm.
back and to let
Mm-hmm.
let the images come to you, as opposed to, okay, I have 7 minutes to look at clouds now. Didn't we just talk
Initiating
about this?
initiating cloud watching procedures now.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So,
Oh, Spock.
yeah. Mhm.
There's an overpass in San Antonio that's relatively new. It was recently built from there's like loops that go around San Antonio that intersect with like highways that go across like that like
North,
bisect San
south, and
Antonio. And
mhm.
there's one, and of course we live in Texas, so people who live in the north uh, think it's absurd, but we have really high overpasses because we don't get a lot of freezes. But there's one where when I drive, I go out of my way to take it because it goes up, 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 up. So it looks like I feel like I'm in the car from Greece at the end that takes off.
Or Thelma and Louise, whichever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I love it because all I can see is sky and clouds.
Wow,
It's
which
just
one is this? Just out of curiosity.
1604 and 281.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's I don't take that one a lot, but I'll try to explore that one. Yeah.
If you're going like from where I live and then you're taking 281 into San Antonio, it's just a beautiful, like at a
Okay.
certain point, all I can see is like a little bit of road in front of me. And then it looks like I'm about ready to drive into the sky. Like
Whoa.
it's very steep. Uh,
Uh-huh.
it's just beautiful because all I can see is just the clouds. So sometimes when it's like a sunset, it's like really beautiful, or like the sun is shining, there's clouds. Like it's just all I can see is sky. And I just feel enveloped in it. And
Yeah.
there's like skid marks on the side from where people have run their car into the side. I'm imagining it's because they get distracted, so I'm very careful. But
Yeah. Yeah, let their tragedy be your warning.
Mhm.
Wow, yeah, well, I've had that experience in a number of other places, but I haven't had it there. So the next time I'm in that area, I'm going to try to see what's going on with that. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Would recommend.
Hmm. Hmm. So I'm trying to think if there's any. other, so, here's another, I mean, I don't know if this is a cultural association, but one of the things that I'm always thinking about, not always, but one of the things that I think about is how air manifests as weather.
Mm.
I mean, so one of the we've talked about this with other elements that there's times when they're very nurturing, life nurturing and life giving, and there's other times where they're very destructive, right? With
Hmm.
fire and water. And similarly, we see that. I mean, generally with air, it tends to be a combination with other elements, like a hurricane, where it's a combination of water and air, or but we do see it, not so much in this country, but in other places we see sandstorms and things like that. But when we do have heavy rains, uh, the air driving the rain can also be really destructive, and and kind of cleansing, right? I mean, often destroying something means you're clearing the way for something else. Of course, if you're invested in the thing that got destroyed, that's not, yeah,
Yeah.
big world,
Yeah.
right? Oh yeah, winds of change. Oh, I think you mentioned that before. Winds of change,
Hmm.
but that's one of those areas where we see, maybe some new life after it. But when you're going through it, it can be well, life altering, and not
Hmm.
necessarily in a positive way at that moment, right?
Hmm.
But we do have those positive aspects of it too, the nurturing, I mean, because it's really nice to be able to breathe, right?
Hmm. I find it
So,
helpful.
yeah. Yeah, and then I think about, because I have sleep apnea, but there are people for whom that is difficult too. You see, I guess more and more as the technology has developed to allow people to be more mobile, you see a lot of people with oxygen tanks, because they're able to breathe, but they're not able to extract enough of the good stuff from the air, and so they need to have it uh, kind of ramped up for them. So I
Hmm.
mean, there's parts of air, part of our interaction with air that is problematized for a number of people.
So as we're recording this, I just turned around and looked. It started raining.
Oh, yay! Good. We need
I'm
we
taking
need
that, yeah,
yeah.
I'm taking that as a message from the sacred of like, it's okay. You can lean into air. I'm right here. The feelings and things are right here. It's okay.
Oh, yes, indeed, indeed. And I feel that one thing about being up on the 20th floor is I feel like I'm surrounded by air.
Mm,
I'm up and away, So, did you ever see the movie Up?
yes.
I haven't, but but I've seen bits. I think I've seen the whole movie because my film studies students show my film music students have shown various parts of it, but I've never seen it from beginning to end. So that's
Whew.
one of the things to add to my list.
I struggle with the opening sequence of Up. I was like, I was crying so hard. I was like, I don't think this is worth it. I don't think watching this movie is worth it for me.
It is. I've seen later parts, but yeah, no, that I said this is how the film starts, and they look at me like, "Hang in there, honey, it gets better."
I don't know. I could have just done a like, he fell in love and then things were bad and she passed. And then I'd be like, okay, let's enter the movie from there. I don't need to. Oh my God.
Yeah, and it's done, and it's done without words, right?
Hmm.
It's just so beautifully done. It's done with music, which is another. Okay, let's go back because we didn't talk
Okay.
about this. For me, another aspect of music of air is we mentioned the idea of communication, but
Hmm.
it can be nonverbal communication as well. And for me, music is such an integral part of my life, and singing, instruments, and air transmits that magic. Air, you sometimes it's actually the sound generator when you're singing or playing a flute or something, but also if I'm making music, playing my trumpet, and there's no air molecules, I'm literally just blowing it in. That I'm not even blowing it in the wind. I'm just like blowing it for myself, and no one else hears it. And so, air is this transmitter of knowledge and wisdom and feeling. in a way, and connection, in such a really, really magical way that we take for granted, or we complain about when, like, for example, I was saying, the car horns outside. We complain about, but without it, in silence, there's a great deal of isolation, you know.
Hmm. I wonder if our listeners will be able to hear that. As soon as you said silence, there was a car horn.
I know I do, and I said I'm not going to talk over that. I'm going to let it, But
Hmm.
yeah, so one of the things I do, I teach a class I I give a lecture for this science fiction group of courses, and it's about I call it the sounds of science fiction. In fact. But I talk about how, sound is the sound is so tied into air, and whereas light, you can see light across the galaxy. We can only hear sound in these various little pockets because you need air molecules. And so that idea of communication, we are isolated on our planet from Mars. We are isolated we can see Mars. If people were dancing on Mars and we had strong enough telescopes, we could see them dancing. But we can't communicate unless we can figure out how to do that without sound. And I just think that when you think about, we're so used to it, we're immersed in it, and it's like the fish can't talk about water.
Hmm.
We can't really talk about how much air is important to us besides breathing. Um, and I'm going to stop now because I could go on about this forever. That'll be another episode.
I think it's really interesting. We're trying to talk about air and our cultural associations with air in a mundane way, but I've noticed that it's like impossible. I think like we keep tying in how magical it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
and and I think that's a way that I want to live my life. I don't want to live with it divorced into different sections. I want to live where it's combined, but there's just such magical associations with air everywhere. Like even in the mundane, like when I feel the wind on my skin, I mean, there's just it's hard to like beat when we're calling the elements and we call east and the wind blows in response. It's just so cool.
And I'm going to suggest that that's because we are sensitive to the magical associations. Just like we said a few minutes
Hmm.
ago, some people complain about sound. Some people complain about, or they find it difficult to take breaths. Or like when I was walking back from breakfast this morning, there's not everyone, but a lot of people are standing out because they can't smoke in their buildings anymore. So you see like someone blow out a puff of smoke. So you kind of hold your breath then, and it's not an obstacle. It's something that I'm kind of rejecting for a moment. But if we open ourselves up to the magical aspects, we see it as so much richer and so much more powerful. But I think that that's our perspective, though, right?
Hmm.
So it's there. It's just, I mean, it's like the radio frequency. The radio is broadcasting, but unless you have your radio tuned to that station, you don't hear that. And so people, if they're not attuned to it, they don't see all of these magical ways that air is impacting us. But having said that, let's talk about some of the
What do you
magical.
what do you have on your altar for air?
Oh, for air, I have right now. Okay, I have a couple of altars. In one, I have an actual altar that was made by someone, and it's blue. It has a blue background. It's like a shadow box, but it's really deep, and it's shaped like a temple, and it's blue, and it has stars on it, and so it's literally like the heavens.
Mm.
On one altar, I have that. On another, I have like years and years ago. I don't know if you remember this. In our group, we used to have like Saturday enrichment things, and we play with
Hmm.
Fimo clay and stuff. And I made this beautiful. I don't know if it was then or that just engendered, that just sparked interest, and I did it at home. But I made this beautiful maybe 6 inch tall, flat representation of Lilith. So, with her face and hair, and she had these white wings that I drew, that I carved little feathers in, and and her hair is moving like she's literally not like she's flying, but she's suspended in air. And her, I tried to get the fluttering feathers, but I obviously didn't do, not obviously, but I didn't do that. So to me, the archetype of Lilith is air, and the imagery I have around her, white and blue and like a little gold, is on my altar. I also have I have some peacock feather. I have different types of feathers. I have an eagle feather. um, because I don't want the law to come after me. But I also have I have some peacock feathers. That to me really, really represents. I think I have, yeah, represents air. And then I have a number of scarves, and I have some chiffons. So they're like white and blue and with a little bit of yellow. So to me, that's air. And I sometimes use them either as an altar cloth, or I just kind of bunch them up and then throw some rocks on them. What about you? What kind of stuff do you do? How do you air up your altar?
I really like if I find feathers whenever I'm walking, sometimes that's really cool to have. I have a lot of incense. I really enjoy incense. And then I have a bell that is from it's a family bell that's been in my family, like, back from at least from when I was little. I don't know where it came from, but it's been around my family at least since I was a little girl. But I have a bell that I really like.
Oh, thank you for reminding me of the bell. I have a Samhain altar that's still up, and it has I have a number of I'm so there are a lot of bells that I just think they sound tinny, but I have
Hmm.
one bell that looks horrible. It looks all tarnished and stuff, but it has the most gorgeous ring. So I have that there. Thank you for
Hmm.
reminding me. I forgot
Hmm.
about bells. I love bells.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, I do essential oils, so I'm constant, like not this week, but I diffuse a lot. I tried, but I'm afraid I'm going to discolor their pots and they're going to charge me. Sometimes what I would do is, maybe put it in a cup and put it in the microwave so it could kind of diffuse. And I might do that in a little bit here. But I love diffusing essential oils. Anything, and you're breathing them in, right? So you're taking them through your over your olfactory nerves, but they're going in. They're kind of suffusing all of the brachia and all of the places in your lungs, and then that seeps it into your blood, and it suffuses your whole body. So I think that that's a wondrous way to get the energy of these essential oils into my body.
Hmm.
You're breathing them.
It's very it's really straddles the mundane and the magical at the same time. I love that.
Total, yeah, totally, totally. Um, but one of the things I think about is, we talked about how we not have negative associations, but we have associations where air, our interactions with air might kind of maybe hinder our full experiencing of events. And but what are some of the ways in which you do use air as a part of a way to kind of increase your self awareness, or help you to grow, or help you to process, if you care to share?
Um, one of my favorite ways of processing through air is journaling, which to me is the physical action of putting my thoughts onto paper. So it's
Hmm.
like physicalizing the mental for me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
as like a very physical body person, I can get lost in my thoughts. So the physical act of writing is really helpful for me, to gain
Ooh,
clarity.
so you're embodying, you're earthing your air.
Yes. Earthing my air. I love that. I love
Oh,
that. Yeah, for sure.
wow. Yeah. 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 What are there other ways?
Um, I think a lot of it is just like physicalizing the thoughts. So like dancing things out, working through things. as I move. Like as I feel the air on my body, it helps me process if I'm moving. And so that's very airy for me because I'm thinking while I'm moving. And I've actually had like major like breakthroughs while I'm dancing. And depending on what those are, it can really impact whoever I'm dancing with. Like I might start crying in the middle of a dance and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Just keep going. It's fine. Pay no attention.
To the tears coursing down my face.
Yeah.
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 It's funny that I do journal sometimes too. I find actually, and this could be a distancing technique in retrospect. I'm not sure, but it makes for good fiction. Sometimes I just write, but I'm not
Mm,
writing. I'm not journaling. I'm writing like a short story or a poem or something like that. And and it's kind of that same idea, but I'm not directly, A to B
mhm,
transcribing my thoughts. I'm transcribing not an experience, but my reaction or response to an experience, and I'm channeling it into hopefully a piece of art. It's often a piece of crap, but maybe a poem or a short story, or I write like I'm writing like a multi-chapter type of thing, but I might not be doing the next part of it. I might jump to a part that kind of reflects that, and then hopefully the story will go in that direction. If not, then it'll be an outtake or something. But yeah, I often channel it into. Um, I often write fiction as opposed to journaling.
mm, mhm,
So yeah, yeah, or I sing, which is still airy, right?
mhm, mhm.
But it's allowing it to be slightly embodied. It has a more of an emotional context. But again, this is I mean, I'd say I've only started doing that in the past 15, 20 years. I think I was locked in my head for a long time before I found outlets for the stuff that I basically just repressed, right?
Mhm.
So it's a part of the fun of the exploration for me is the exploration of finding these ways that some of which you talked about so beautifully.
I also really love just laying in my bed and like looking out the window and seeing the trees dancing in the wind. Like I just love that so much.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Do you ever like lay out on do you ground like lay on the ground and just look up at the trees?
Hmm.
Yeah.
A large portion of my life is just me looking at trees.
Is there a backyard behind your backyard, or is there a green belt behind your
It's a
backyard?
green belt. It's a park,
Okay.
which is
That is,
why I bought the house for the trees.
yeah, the house is like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Is there a bedroom? Is there a kitchen? We're good to go. Okay.
That's fine. It's fine as long as there are trees.
Wow. Yeah. So you have a magical spot
Hmm.
to kind of invoke your magic.
Hmm.
Yeah. I I feel better having done this episode. Well, and okay, so here's the thing. I think I kind of liked being in my head about being in my head, and and didn't want to address it, and that was part of the reason why we kept putting it off a little bit. When
Hmm.
if we just done it, it would have been fine, right? But we were so in our head about it that we just made it to be more than wow, I'm really getting congested here. I don't know why. We made it out to be more than it really was. Yeah.
Hmm. I'd like to talk about air in ritual, if that's cool.
Sure.
I so air is associated with east, and so like I'm thinking a lot about when we call east in ritual and what that looks like. And one of the things I love is when people use fans or anything to like move the air, or we feel the air blowing on us, or like when we happen to call east and then the wind blows. Um, I love that physicalization of the element and the way I experience it in that sacred space.
Mm-hmm. I I I think that that's a really powerful experience of it, and and I wonder, is it more? I mean, I experience it. I think, and when I'm, doing solitary work or when I'm alone. But I wonder if it's more powerful. No, I'm sure it's more powerful because we're doing it in circle, and it. I find that it helps me because I tend to not want to do stuff with air. It helps me to experience it in a really, uh, in a very healthy way, in a way that allows me to interact with it on my level, but still get the powerful experience from by benefit of the work that we're doing with all the other women. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I love is when we're invoking it, often we embody it by making sounds like whooshing sounds or,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we often use it to ground, right? We'll in our
Mm-hmm.
grounding or our centering, we'll, like I said, take those breaths together. And often our breaths become kind of synchronized, even though we don't, in our circle, we don't do a lot where we're breathing the exact same amount and someone's leading us. You know how you've been in those experiences. We
Mm-hmm.
tend to not do that. We tend to say at your own speed or at your own comfort level or whatever. Um, but I do find that we do get synchronized every once in a while. It's pretty. And when that happens, it's like the energy. The energy. I was saying it's like the energy totally changes in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a woman in our circle that uh after we do magical work and after we do some sort of energy work, she will uh breathe, like she'll do a loud exhale as if
Hmm. Hmm.
like blowing the intent into whatever the magic we've done. And that's something that I picked up from just sharing space with her, that I really like to do.
Hmm.
Either like doing a loud forceful blowing, to like send that magic physically into through the air into our magical work,
Hmm.
or like another way that I do it that's similar but different is like speaking the magic
Yes.
or affirming the
Hmm.
magic through speech. And sometimes we'll do that by like after our magical workings, we'll take turns like sharing something. It might be a word or like sharing a phrase or something like that, as a way of like solidifying and affirming the magic that we've done.
Hmm.
I find that to be really powerful because I both find it powerful to be the one that shares, but also getting to witness and hear what other people have worked with in the magic is like really powerful for me.
Oh, for sure. Just witnessing. Yeah. Something that you say, and I love it when we'll just be saying something, and you say, "Let's say that again," and you say, third time makes it." How do you say it? Third time
Third
makes it spell.
time, yeah, third times makes a spell.
Yeah, I love that, and I never think of it on my own, but when you say it, it's like, wow, and you can I feel it the third time.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, what would it be? You know?
Hmm. um, there's another thing that I wanted to share, which as a ritual planner, as a priestess, and someone, I personally think that I'm good at planning in a lot of ways. Like I'm good at the organizational stuff. I'm good at planning. I'm good at getting people together so that we can create something, like doing the logistics. I'm good at all of that. And so sometimes whenever I'm the priestess in that ritual, I'm thinking about all of those things that we've planned, and then this is going to happen. And now I'm waiting for this to happen. And how is this showing up? And do we need to adjust? I'm doing all of those things. And which I think is very airy. And there's also this other time whenever um, I'm so lost in the ritual, if I'm experiencing the ritual in my intensity of it. And so I'm just a very intense person. So I feel very big. I have big feelings. So I get lost in, I get lost in the tide of the ritual, and I'm swirling around and things are, I'm being pushed, and in rituals where I'm really, really being pushed, um,
Mm.
I it does not come naturally to me, but I feel this urge, that before especially if I'm going to make like a pact or a covenant with something. So like, like the stakes are high, and I'm realizing the importance of this pact, or I'm realizing this, like that there is something on the line here. It's almost like I pull myself out of the tossing and turning of the feelings, and as if I'm like sitting myself down in a chair and I'm like, listen, you need to think about this. I give myself a talking to, before you commit to, because I know you're feeling all these feelings and you're like tossing and turning and you're pulled and like, like you're like hot with all of this. Like, you need to like think about this. Is this something that you really want? Are you really going to make this pact? Because there are consequences.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, you had a hold up moment.
Yes, hold up. And I think in some ways those are few and far between for me, magically, but they're really powerful when they do happen.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're stepping back, right? And so you're able to, gain a little perspective. And so you can kind of see, like, well, I'm guessing that there's this potential to see all of these things that are going on in a really, I don't know, helpful way. And then you can, like, I think you said way back when we started this discussion an hour or so ago about making choices. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Well, first of all, I appreciate the insight, because I just see one side of the whole, I see okay, let's do this. Let's do that. You're pinning your clipboard. Okay. And what will you do? And what will you do? Okay. I don't see how the sausage gets made. how the tofu sausage gets made.
It's right. The sausage gets made.
The sausage, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for that insight. Really.
You're welcome. Do you consider when we're singing in our circle to be airy?
Yes, and I consider it to be airy. So airy to me tends to. There's two kind of associations for me. Airy can be totally disembodied, which I'm trying to avoid. I want kind of some balance and the most helpful ways to utilize something. And when I get into that, I am totally disconnected from the real world. I'm almost delusional. And so that's one thing that can happen when singing, tend to happen, particularly when we're singing in circle, is this really centering, focused, where it's I wouldn't say communicative, because I don't know what actually is being communicated, but really kind of creating this real network of magic that's kind of zinging around the room, and that is very, very airy to me. That kind of communication of whatever, of intensity, of experience, of intuition, of magic, of energy, is very much a part of that. And when that's happening, it's like everyone's kind of like, your hair is flying back and the whole bit, because you're just you're literally riding the wind. You are riding the wind, and it's taking you where it's going to take you, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be fabulous. And that's when I can release the majority of control. And it doesn't happen that often. And as you know, sometimes when we're drumming, we're not releasing control. We're like, okay, should we do this now? Should we do that? But sometimes it happens where I can just totally let it go, and know that it's going to be fabulous without me directing it. And it's magical. And that is definitely when we're singing, when everyone is singing, and kind of really charging. And it happens when I sing by myself too. It happens when I sing by myself. And so I think that's a really, really vital part that I don't pay a lot of attention to. Thank you for highlighting its importance to me.
I love it whenever we do a lot of singing in our circle. I love it whenever we speak rhythmically.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
We don't do it very often, but when we do it, I'm always like, wow, this is really powerful and cool.
Why don't we do this more often?
Yeah. Because we're busy singing.
There's just so many things we could be doing. It's like this smorgasbord, and we only have so little time, So We're going to end our episode with a chant that we sing in our circle. It's really meaningful to me, and I really enjoy singing it. Would you care to share some of the information about this?
Yeah, so I know that I learned it from when we were practicing with not our circle that we normally practice with, but um, the people who wrote it, Suzanne Sterling and Jeffrey Alphonsus Mooney, were teachers at that thing that we were at, and they taught it, and they wrote it. I know it was copyrighted in 2016, but it's called "I Am Breathing." And I know for me personally, it was really powerful to get to be there and learn it from them and hear them sing it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, why don't we do this? I will read the first couple of lines and you read the next, and then we'll do the same and sing it through so everyone can hear it.
Sounds
Okay?
great.
I am breathing. I am open. I am willing. I am stepping out into the unknown.
I am walking, though uncertain. I am willing to listen to the journey of my soul.
Oh, if my soul says so, I do as my soul says.
If my soul says so, I do as my soul says.
If my soul says so, I do as my soul says. Okay.
If my soul says so, I do as my soul says.
I am breathing. I am open. I am willing. I am stepping out into the unknown. I am walking, though uncertain. I am willing to listen to the journey of my soul.
If my soul says so, I do as my soul says. If my soul says so, I do as my soul says. If my soul says so, I do as my soul says. If my soul says so, I do as my soul says.
That's beautiful. Now, of course, if we were in circle, we would sing that, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 times if we could. But we just wanted to share a little bit of this with you. And thank you so much for listening to us sing this chant that has so much meaning for our circle, and for accompanying us as we interact with and process our relationship with the element of air.
We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our Witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!